Today, Sogra is taking her daughter into the mountains to pick wild produce, bringing it back for the children to taste. It is the sweetest gift of autumn in the mountains. This morning, Sogra took out the family's protective clothing, preparing to wear it to collect honey. However, this time it wasn't about climbing mountains to find wild bees like last time, but about harvesting the fruits of labor from their own carefully tended bee colonies. The children, one by one, were craving it badly, gathering around Sogra and clamoring for honey. Sogra had no choice but to agree, preparing to personally extract the fresh honey to satisfy this group of little foodies. Ho Ziying held an empty beehive high, while Fatima held the hive lid. They were getting ready to take these empty boxes, and lids down to the apiary below to start collecting honey. Now, they are using a smoker to create smoke by lighting kindling. This calms the bees and reduces their aggression. However, the amount of smoke must be controlled. Too little won't have a calming effect, while too much might agitate the bees and cause them to fly away. The technique is to use a gentle, continuous, clean smoke, puffing it slowly near the hive entrance and top, allowing the smoke to spread without being choking. It is best to avoid directly blasting the hive opening. Too much smoke can make the bees overly stressed, and even harm them. Now, Sogra takes out a honeycomb frame. On this wooden frame, you can see hexagonal beeswax cells. Some have already been capped with white wax by the bees, which is a sign that the honey has been stored and sealed. Many cells on this frame are not yet completely full, some are even empty or contain only a small amount of honey. It will be some time before it's fully capped. This particular honeycomb appears to be completely capped. The honey is ready and has been sealed by the bees, with beeswax to prevent moisture loss and spoilage. Sogra gently brushes the surface of the comb with a leaf to shoo away the bees resting on it. These displaced bees will not become homeless, they will quickly crowd onto the remaining frames, and continue their busy work. The division of labor among bees is very flexible. Worker bees who have lost their comb will join the work on other frames, such as caring for larvae, cleaning the hive, and storing or ripening honey. Although the colony density will temporarily increase, the bees will not fight for position but will quickly adjust their places, utilize the empty space in the hive, and continue their well-organized life. Now Sogra opens the second hive, similarly choosing a frame that is already fully capped. Most of this honeycomb is sealed with white wax, and the honey in these cells is mature, but a very small portion of the cells are still exposed. The other side has quite a few uncapped cells. Normally, a beekeeper would wait until both sides are capped before harvesting, but Sogra decides to take it out anyway. Sogra opens the third hive. According to her plan, she harvests one mature honeycomb from each hive. One side is mostly ripened and capped, but the other side is almost empty. The cells are either not yet filled with honey, or are just newly built wax foundations where honey filling has not yet begun. Sogra reselects a frame that is almost completely capped on both sides. The honey inside has been fully ripened, has low moisture content, high sugar concentration, is stable for storage and is very suitable for harvesting. Soon, she takes out a second frame that is also quite completely capped, and in good condition. This way, she takes two high-quality honeycombs from the third hive at once. Sogra now opens the fourth hive, but the bee colony inside is very small, and there are not many honeycombs. Moreover, the honey has not been capped and matured. Their current reserves are only enough for them to survive the winter. If she were to take honey, it would affect their survival, so she will not harvest from this hive, leaving it as a food store for the bees. Just as Sogra put down the hive and took off her protective suit, Yasin and Hussein jumped up. They waved their arms, grinning from ear to ear, their steps light and carefree. They needed no music, their rhythm was the joy in their hearts. The two brothers were happy because their mother had collected honey for them. This sweetness had already melted in their hearts before it even touched their lips, transforming into the simplest, most direct form of happiness. Now, it was finally time for the moment the whole family had been waiting for. Sogra used a small knife to gently cut along the edge of the honeycomb. As the blade sliced through, golden honey slowly trickled down the cut. The cut honeycomb was divided into several small strips, making it easy to share with the children to taste. The honeycomb's colors were a mix of light and dark shades, and the cells, full of honey, glistened. This was its pure, natural, and unprocessed state. The quality of this honeycomb was very high. The honey came directly from the local mountain flowers and plants. It hadn't undergone industrial filtering or high-temperature heating, thus retaining its nutrients like pollen, beeswax, and propolis. Simply put, compared to the processed honey we eat, this comb honey is more primitive and pure. It's the taste of nature itself. Yasin loved to eat honey, but he was also afraid of being stung by bees, so he would shy away if he saw one. The children ate piece after piece without stopping. Yasin, in particular, ate with such focus, continuously stuffing it into his mouth until he was full. It was a joy for everyone else to just watch him eat. Sogra also encouraged the children to eat more, because this mountainous area has many medicinal plants, and the bees fly far to collect their essence and bring it back. This honey has a slight tingling sensation when you taste it, unlike the one-dimensional sweetness of supermarket honey. Soon, all the honeycombs were cut and piled into a large basin. Yasin wanted to lift it to see how heavy it was, but he couldn't move it at all. Honey is denser than water. For the same volume, honey weighs about a third more than water. The weight of this entire basin was no small matter for little Yasin. Sogra scraped the remaining honey, and bits of comb from the tray into the basin. These seemingly leftover scraps were actually full of good stuff, and could not be wasted. The honey would be covered with a lid to keep out dust and small insects. The traditional method is to store it at room temperature. Because honey itself has low moisture and high sugar content, it acts as a strong natural preservative, and can be stored in its honeycomb state for a long time, even for a year or several years without issue. Zainab started sweeping with a broom. After eating honey, it was time to work. Of course, the work wasn't just her task alone. The children all went about their own chores. Sogra tasked Hussein with refilling the bees' water trough. The children then began to fold the blankets and tidy up the bedding. Everyone worked together. The children of nomadic families are taught from a young age not to be lazy, and that they must do their best to complete their household chores. After finishing their work, Sogra and Zainab put on their shoes, preparing to go foraging. She instructed Hussein to look after his younger siblings, and watch over the home until they returned. After getting ready, Sogra and Zainab slung cloth bags over their shoulders, and set off on the road to the Great Mountains. They were going to forage for something that only ripens in the mountains during this season. The mother and daughter walked along the mountain path as the whistling wind brought a hint of coolness. Before they had gone far, they saw a black object ahead. Upon getting closer, they saw it was a huge black bird, already lifeless. Sogra picked it up and spread its wings. Its feathers were jet black and glossy, its wings were broad, and its legs were long and thick, looking very powerful. This was likely a raven, the largest type in the crow family, and very common in the mountains of Iran. Its head was covered in dense feathers, unlike the bald or sparsely feathered head and neck of a vulture. Its feet were anisodactyl, with 3 toes forward and 1 back, suited for walking. The claws were not particularly thick or long, unlike the strong, grasping talons of a vulture or eagle used for capturing prey. This raven had probably died recently, as its wings could be fully extended. Sogra looked at it for a long while, feeling a sense of pity for the large bird. The raven's head had clear traces of blood and abrasions, which often indicates an external impact or blow. It might have been caused by a fight in the air with other large birds of prey, such as eagles, or a fierce attack by its own kind. Sogra and Zainab continued onward. The path ahead became increasingly difficult, with loose stones and steep cliffs underfoot. A single misstep could lead to a fall into the valley. Zainab was agile and walked ahead. Such a path tested not only physical strength but also courage. Every step had to be taken with extreme care and placed firmly. They passed one cliff face and arrived at the next. To pick those wild fruits, Sogra and Zainab had to embark on such perilous journeys time and time again, scaling nearly vertical cliffs and steep slopes. But for nomadic people, such hardship and risk are a part of life. Even if it's just for a basket of wild pears or fruits, they will set out without hesitation. The two came to a very dangerous section of the path. Zainab, being nimble, leaped across with a single stride. Sogra, however, was much more cautious. She couldn't jump across like Zainab, and could only carefully reach for a nearby branch, inching her way steadily to the other side. After walking for a good while, the mother and daughter finally saw their target ahead, the wild pear tree growing on the cliff's edge. But upon getting closer, the situation left Sogra a bit disappointed. The branches were more than half empty, someone had clearly been there before them. All that remained were a few scattered fruits, glowing golden in the sunlight, nature's last small gift. These wild pears were plump and perfectly ripe. Some of their skins had a few spots and fine scratches, marks left by the wind, sun, and rain. In a few more days, they might have become overripe and fallen to the ground. The mother and daughter began to pick the few remaining wild pears from the tree. Life in the great mountains is like this, timing is fleeting. If you come a few days early, the fruit is still sour and not yet sweet, but if you are just one step too late, it might have been pecked away by birds and beasts or picked by someone else. This pear was medium-sized, with a shape slightly like a gourd, a pale yellow skin, and rather fine-textured, juicy flesh. It is a common wild yellow pear of the mountains, highly adaptable and able to grow on barren mountain land and in arid environments. In theory, this wild pear could be propagated through cuttings, grafting, or transplanting seedlings, but for a nomadic family like Sogra's, the reality is not so simple. After working for a while, the mother and daughter finished picking all the fruit from the tree. Now they prepared to wash a wild pear and have a taste. They took a bite and felt it was quite good. Even with a hint of wild astringency mixed in with the sweet and sour, to them, it was the best flavor. After eating the wild pear, the mother and daughter packed their things, slung the cloth bags over their shoulders, and set off on the mountain path back home, so the other children could also have a taste. Although there weren't many, it was a gift bought with their mother's sweat, courage, and patience. The family's goats, with their varied coat colors and different sizes, came back slowly along the mountain path. Yasin ran over to give the flock water to drink. He and his older brother Hussein took care of the family's herd together. With many children in the family, life can be more tiring, but there is also more labor. The flock needs to be herded, watered, and driven, the tent needs to be pitched, firewood needs to be gathered, and during moves, all the bags and bundles of daily necessities need people to carry them. These fragmented yet heavy chores are divided among each child, so the household can run without being stretched too thin. When Yasin saw his mother return, he immediately put on a little performance. He was performing for the pears his mother brought back, but she deliberately teased him, saying, "I didn't find any today." Yasin didn't believe her for a second. "I know you have them," he said, "the pears are hidden in your bag." The children quickly gathered around, somewhat impatiently. Perhaps in a city, a pear is just an ordinary fruit, but in this arid, mountainous land, its sweet fragrance is a rare and welcome surprise. The children took big bites directly into the fruit. The flesh had already become very soft as all the pears were ripe. The children ate with great satisfaction. Sogra's life may be hard, but as long as her children were smiling before her, even for just a few wild pears, she felt that all the trekking and toil was worth it. Life is just like that, simple, yet sweet enough.